Hello, Edoardo.
Hello.
How are you?
Give me 1 second. I have to fix something with the audio.
Okay.
I'm trying to run it through my headphones. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, terrific. Sorry about this little buffer.
When we're ready, I will ask you the questions.
Yes, give me a second. Let me turn on.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we're all good.
Hello, Edoardo. Please, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Edoardo Vitaletti. I'm originally from Italy. Was born in Milan and moved to New York about 6 years ago, I believe, to attend college at NYU. And so I did film school there. And towards the end of my kind of film school career, I began to make this movie, The Last Thing Mary Saw, which I wrote and directed after making a few shorts here and there. And yeah, now The Last Thing Mary Saw is my first, it's my debut feature and my first real kind of directorial work. And yeah, now I live in New York, and that's me, more or less.
Perfect. In a few words, can you talk a little about the story of your first film?
Sure, yeah. So The Last Thing Mary Saw is horror drama. It's a period horror drama. It's based in 1843 in rural New York area, more specifically in Southold, New York. And it tells the story of young Mary, a woman who has been raised in a repressively religious household, and who's now under investigation after the kind of mysterious departure of her family's matriarch. And as she starts to retell the story to the town's investigators, she sheds more light on her romantic relationship with the housemaid. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of noise on your end. As well as on the sort of ageless forces that end up playing a role from within and without the household.
What were your main sources of inspiration? Some movies, some books?
Actually, so the main sources of inspiration for this story, I guess, it all started from a lot of paintings. I was studying and researching a lot into mostly 19th century Scandinavian visual art, a lot of Danish painters like Hammershøi, a lot of Faroe Island painters like Mykines, and there were a lot of representations of female subjects like alone in this kind of palatial 19th century Scandinavian houses, as well as the representation of the funeral scenes, like families surrounding. Sorry, I'm hearing like so much noise coming from your end. I'm trying to stay focused.
Okay.
So a lot of funeral scenes with families attending wakes, and this very dark, beautiful image of the morning. And so that was kind of my entry point into story, into like the visual. That was like the visual inspiration, and then that turned into a lot of research on the folklore of the time period, 19th century, sort of a Christian folklore, and then of course like a lot of it kind of like my personal upbringing, having been raised in Italy in a very like Catholic environment. I had a very open and beautiful family, but a lot of the community around me, like a lot of the contradictions of Christianity and Catholicism, that kind of inspire the narrative of the story and the antagonistic forces present in the movie.
What can you tell us about your filming locations?
I'm sorry, what?
What can you tell us about the filming location? Why you shot the movie, the different places?
Yeah, so the movie was all pretty much shot in one location, which is the main house where you see the family's sort of isolated farmhouse that we found out on Long Island. And yeah, it was like a pretty period appropriate kind of architecture and location, because it was originally built in the 1700s, and then there were several additions to it. And so we ended up filming there, everything more or less on location. And it was, of course, it was quite challenging, but what was really important to us was, of course, the kind of truthfulness of the architectural kind of truthfulness of the time period. And it made it really fun. You have a lot of restrictions when you're shooting on location as opposed to soundstage. And being able to kind of embrace those limitations, though, made for, like it kind of made its way into the narrative, like in an interesting way. And yeah.
What should be for you a good acting direction? What can you tell us about your work with Isabelle Fuhrman, Stefanie Scott, and Rory Culkin?
Yeah, I mean, I was really blessed with a great cast, of course, and when you work with people of that caliber, it's really like it's very easy to direct them, because it's also, you can be very brief typically. Like, we had a lot of conversations coming into the movie and before the set. When I talked to them for the first time, we did a lot of research together on the costuming, the hairstyles, body language, dialect, and an accent, and yeah, so we all came into this piece already having a sense of the atmosphere. And they delivered it very, very well. And so when you're there on set, the directions are typically very, very simple, because we can all go back to those longer conversations that we were having before the shoot. And so, yeah, I mean, just also people who have a lot of experience within the genre, so they kind of knew a little bit what the gist was going to be as well. But yeah, very, very curious performers too, which is, it's kind of nice when you're making a time period for them to be asking a lot of questions about, like, how should I speak? What should my dialect be? My accent and everything.
In this specific time, how is it difficult actually to create a movie and found some funds to do it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of the question.
In this specific time about pandemic, COVID-19, how is it difficult actually to create a new movie and to find some funds, money to create it?
Yeah, I mean, making movies has not gotten any easier over the past 2 years, for sure. And
Yes.
we were kind of lucky because we shot it right before the pandemic, because we shot the movie in December 2019. But it's kind of a challenge, I think. At the same time, though, it's a little harder to, like, for someone to decide to make an investment on making a movie, because the kind of general economic climate is a little more tense, of course, and theaters are not very happy with the general revenue that they're getting from movies that can only come out in theaters. And so that's kind of a big making a movie is always a big what if, but now it's becoming an even bigger one and a bigger gamble. At the same time, though, the interesting thing is, I think we all collectively understood once and for all, like the importance of the streaming platforms, and of that, like, the access that that streaming platforms can give people to great content. We are going to have our movie released through Shudder in 2022, and we're extremely happy about that. And I think that's that part of that aspect of the filmmaking industry. Like, it became much harder because the climate is so difficult, but at the same time, all these new sources of viewership increase the appetite. So there was a nice kind of rebalancing there, and I'm personally very grateful, of course, to Shudder specifically, but to the kind of proliferation of streaming platforms, because they just allowed so many more people to watch movies, and because they're so much hungry for content. To some degree, you have more places that you can potentially tap into to make a movie. So it's harder to commit to a financial investment, but you can ask more people and you have more potential sources.
Which are for you the good ingredients to create a good horror movie?
I actually think, for me at least, what was really important to me, it should always, I think great horror movies are always about, like, they're more about the subtext than what you actually see on screen. Like you can make a horror movie that seems to be revolving a lot around, on killing, torturing, kind of, like scary images, nightmares and whatnot. But it like the key ingredient to make a movie like that good is to make all those things about something else. It's like, it's the horror and the killing and the revenge and the bloodshed. Like my movie, for instance, like the key kind of dramatic aspect of it is that it is a movie about wanting to be together. It's a movie about togetherness, and it's about oppression, and it's about just wanting to be themselves for the main two actors. So I think, to me, the key ingredient is always to find the real, why are you telling the story? Why do you want to say the things that you're saying? And to not solely focus on the surface level kind of shock value of the imagery, because I think a bloody image that doesn't mean much, it feels very empty, and the audiences have become, they're so intuitive, and I think we have become collectively a little bit better at understanding what movies do those things for shock value, and what movies do that for because they're trying to convey a real experience. So it should always be about something else than the shock itself.
What was the most difficult scene for you to shoot, and why?
Well, the most difficult thing to shoot, as far as my like the blocking and everything, I think, like the dinner scene towards the end, which I'm not going to say too much about, but when people see it, they will realize there's a lot of blocking and like a lot of shots involved. The room where we shot it was not very big. We had a lot of performers. I think on that day we were working with like 13, 15 actors at once. And that was definitely one of the most challenging as well. But I think, oddly enough, one of the most difficult things, for a very practical reason, was we had to work with chickens a lot in the movie. And I mean, of all the animals that, like, generally speaking, it's really hard to work with animals, of course, because it's hard to direct something that's kind of, it's not quite listening to you. But chicks are really difficult, making them do what we, doing the right thing at the right moment. It was just, we had to reshoot that quite a bit. I think we picked up a few close-ups after we were done shooting, because it just didn't look quite right at first. And it's because that, as much as the dinner scene, for instance, is very complicated and complex, everything was under our control. When you're dealing with animals, it's just completely out of your control, and you kind of have to be patient and wait, and hopefully, you're lucky enough that you get to do it. So that was the most difficult one, probably.
What can you tell us about the fact that mainly your movie takes place in the darkness light?
I'm sorry, could you say the question again?
I have saw twice your movie, and mainly all the scene take place in the darkness, no light. Yeah. Can you speak a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to not be fake about the portrayal of the time period, and we wanted to force ourselves to have the same limitations that I wrote into the story for my characters. So when the sun goes down in the 19th century, you only have candles to see. And you have to go outside if you have to use the bathroom, and you have to do this and that. So, with the lighting, we were very specific, my DP and I, and we wanted to use as many natural sources as possible. So which was kind of challenging, because of course when you're blocking an actor and you're only using a candle at night, it's hard, because when there's like slightly missing their mark, maybe they're literally going out of light all at once, and it's a little complicated. But having that limitation, once again, it kind of informs, like, the blocking informs the camera and the angles, as far as I'm concerned. So having those limitations for ourselves made it added to the story, and we wanted to be very specific. Like, we didn't want to shoot something where you could understand exactly that, like 2 inches off screen, there's a camera and there's a light stand and whatnot, because of course, when you're filming something that's set in the past, it like, the audience comes into the experience knowing that there is a patina of this is not really happening on your movie. And the more that you can do to not take them out of the story, the better. And so all of that darkness and all those candlelight scenes, we wanted it to be with natural light. We didn't fake it more or less at any point, because it was important to keep the people in the story.
What can you tell us about your collaboration with the composer Keegan DeWitt?
Yeah, I mean, once again, like I was incredibly lucky. One of the people that I ended up spending the most time with during post-production, even though we were working remotely. I mean, he had such a good understanding of the story and of the type of approach that I wanted to have on this movie. Like I was talking about before, how the key ingredient to make a great horror movie for me is to always make it about something else, like to find your deep, like the why that's at the core of you wanting to tell the story. He understands that so well, and he understood that so well. Like, yes, the movie's dark, there are moments of violence, there are moments of fear, scare, anxiety, but he understood that at its core, it is a movie that, you know, it revolves around the story of two people wanting to be together. It is a movie that revolves around oppression and so forth. And so every scene, every time you would compose something, like a lot of the times you see horror movies that work very well tonally, where, you know, like high strings and it's unnerving and it's scary, and that's all good and great, but there isn't much character to it. There isn't too much personality to it. And one thing that Keegan and I always talked about was, let's not just make the sort of tonal thing. It's dark, it's scary, it's unnerving. Let's reach for the character. Let's bring up that subtext. Let's really remind ourselves and the audience all the time why we're telling the story. And he understood that very, very well. So it was a great collaboration.
The Last Mariso will have its premiere this Sunday during the Fantasia Festival, and also will be shown in the Fright Fest Festival. Wednesday, we have learned that Shudder acquired the right of this movie for North America, United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. What are your feelings about all that?
Incredibly excited. You know, we've been making this movie for a couple of years, and it's super exciting to have it watched by audiences, you know, whether it's virtual at Fantasia this Sunday or at Fright Fest in London, and August 28th, I think we have our first in-person screening of the movie. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I couldn't have asked for a better partner than Shudder in releasing this movie. And, you know, like they know what great genre storytelling is. And I'm just very pleased that they looked at our movie and took notice and thought that we were kind of worthy addition to their slate. And so just the fact that even more people are going to be able to see it in 2022 on their platform is super, super exciting. I feel very, very honored. Yeah.
What have you learned and retained from making this movie?
I mean, I've learned a lot of things, a lot of painful lessons, a lot of beautiful lessons. I think, you know, I've been asked that question a lot, and over the past few days, I realized really like the one thing that always stands out to me is like some great advice that my cinematographer gave me during the production. It's something really important because it has a very practical effect and outcome on the shooting of the movie. But, you know, I was very stressed because we were going really fast and the shoot was really intense. And then somewhere halfway through it, he gave me this kind of tip to never forget to have fun with it and to find some lightness and levity in the process, no matter how fast you're going, no matter how dark the story is. And I think the movie just immediately, like the shoot and the movie, became so much better after that. And I think the big lesson is to remember the joy of filmmaking is going to trickle into the product. It's going to have an effect on, it's going to color the final cut of the movie. So that's the biggest thing I think that I learned. That's the most that's the thing that I remember the most, I think, from the shoot, as far as like the pleasant things that I've learned. Yeah.
And my last question, which are your current projects?
So you'll probably see me operate in a similar field soon enough. We have been working on another script that's kind of still it's in the genre space. It may not be a horror movie, but still, you know, like period piece folklore. And hopefully we will be able to kind of talk more in detail soon. But yeah, there is definitely something in the works, and you know, in a similar vein.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.